The girl's story begins in a quiet corner of Japan, far from big cities and far from places where people usually discover great talent. She lived in a simple neighborhood where most families knew each other, and where days passed in a calm and predictable way. But inside her small house, something different was growing, something that no one, not even she, fully understood yet. Since childhood, she had always been drawn to sound. Not loud music or fast songs, but soft notes that carried emotion. Her grandmother would hum old Japanese melodies as she cooked or folded laundry, and the girl would sit nearby, quietly watching how a simple tune could change the feeling in the whole room. She didn't think of it as music at that time. She only knew it made her heart feel warm. When she was around 10, she heard a street performer for the first time. She was walking home from school with her backpack slipping off her shoulder when the sound of a piano drifted through the air. It was not a real piano, just a small keyboard placed on a foldable table on a sidewalk in the next town. But to her, it sounded magical. She stopped walking without even realizing it and watched the man play a gentle melody that repeated softly, like a whisper. She didn't speak or move for a long time. Something about the sound made her feel like she had stepped into a different world. When the performer finished, she wanted to clap, but she froze and simply stared. The man smiled at her, the kind of smile that didn't need words, and she felt her cheeks turn warm. She hurried home and kept hearing the melody in her head for the rest of the evening. From that day, her interest in music grew quietly, like a secret she held close to her chest. She didn't tell her parents much about it because she knew they were already working hard. Her father worked long hours at a small factory, and her mother managed a local store. They always made sure she had everything she needed, but she could tell they were careful with money. Asking for piano lessons felt like asking for something impossible. Still, the desire to learn did not fade. She found an old keyboard at a second-hand shop not far from her school. It was scratched, a few keys were loose, and the sound wasn't perfect. But she looked at it the way someone might look at a treasure. Even though it wasn't expensive, she knew it would still be too much for her family to buy without planning. So she quietly saved small amounts from her lunch allowance whenever she could dot by her 13th birthday. She finally had enough to buy the keyboard. She didn't throw a party that year, but she didn't mind. Carrying the keyboard home was one of the happiest moments she could remember. Her parents were surprised, touched, and slightly worried, but when they saw how much it meant to her, they didn't say no. She set the keyboard on a low wooden table in her tiny room. It barely fit. Every night after finishing homework, she sat down and pressed the keys softly, trying to match the sounds with the melodies she remembered. She searched for free tutorials online and practiced late into the night. Sometimes her fingers hurt from pressing the keys too hard. Sometimes she made the same mistake again and again, but she never felt frustrated enough to give up. She wasn't trying to be a star or become famous. She simply loved the way the piano made her feel. It was like an invisible friend that understood her without words. When she played, time moved slower, and everything around her felt calmer. One day at school, her music teacher asked the class to create a simple melody using any instrument they had at home. Most students shrugged, not thinking much of it, but she took the assignment seriously. She spent days trying different combinations of notes. She didn't have fancy techniques, just pure curiosity and patience. When the day came to present, she carried her small keyboard to school with both hands, holding it carefully so it wouldn't slip. The teacher listened with interest as she played her short melody. It wasn't perfect, but something about the way she played soft, focused, and gentle made the room feel different. The teacher clapped before she even finished the last note dot after class. The teacher pulled her aside. She expected criticism or correction, but instead, the teacher told her she had natural talent. She didn't understand what that meant at first. She didn't think of herself as talented. She simply loved the sound of the piano. But the teacher encouraged her to join the community center's music group, where she could learn more. That suggestion changed everything. The community center was small but lively. Children practiced dance routines in one room. Older people played board games in another, and down the hall was a quiet space with a dusty upright piano. When she first saw the piano, she felt nervous to even touch it. It looked so grand and serious, nothing like her small keyboard. Her teacher introduced her to a local music instructor, an older woman who had taught piano for many years. The instructor asked her to sit and play anything she knew. Her hands shook slightly as she pressed the keys, but once she played the first few notes, her nerves softened. The instructor nodded slowly, surprised by the girl's natural sense of timing and emotion. It was clear she still had much to learn, but the foundation was already there. With her parents' permission, the instructor agreed to give her affordable lessons at the center. At first, the girl struggled with reading sheet music. The notes and symbols seemed like a new language, but she practiced carefully, taking her time. She listened closely whenever the instructor demonstrated a technique and repeated it until it felt natural in her fingers. Over months, her confidence grew. Her strokes became smoother. Her timing became steadier. But what stood out most was the emotion she put into each piece. She didn't play mechanically or simply try to get the notes right. She tried to understand the meaning behind the music. During one lesson, the instructor introduced her to Chopin. The moment she heard the first recording of one of his pieces, she felt something spark inside her. The melody carried both sadness and beauty. It was delicate but deep, soft but powerful. She was stunned that music could feel so full of emotion. She asked the instructor about Chopin and learned that he composed music that often expressed feelings that words couldn't show. His songs were known to touch the hearts of listeners even after many years. That night, she listened to more Chopin on her old headphones. She lay on her floor while the music played softly from her phone. She felt connected to the sound in a way she had never felt with any other music. It felt like someone whispering emotions directly into her heart. She knew then that she wanted to learn how to play Chopin someday, even if it took years of work. Her parents, though tired from long days at work, noticed her dedication. They saw her wake up early just to practice before school and stay up late whispering notes into the night. They didn't always understand classical music, but they understood her passion. And sometimes that was enough. At school, she remained quiet and didn't talk about piano much. Only a few classmates knew she played. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. Music was something private to her, something personal. But even in her silence, her talents grew. The community center held a small recital once a year. When her instructor suggested she participate, she felt her heart jump. She wasn't used to performing in front of people. The idea made her anxious. Her hands would shake even imagining it. But her instructor encouraged her gently, saying it would help her grow. After thinking for days, she agreed. Preparing for the recital became a turning point in her young life. She practiced harder than she ever had before. She spent afternoons repeating the same sections until they flowed smoothly. She practiced controlling her breathing, reminding herself to stay calm. On the night before the recital, she felt a mix of excitement and fear. She wondered if she was ready, if she would make mistakes, if people would judge her. But at the same time, she felt proud of how far she had come. She knew she had grown from the girl who once froze while watching a street performer. The next morning, she woke early even though she hadn't slept well. She wore a simple dress and tied her hair back neatly. Her parents couldn't attend because of work, but they gave her their support before leaving the house. At the community center, she sat backstage with her hands on her lap, feeling them tremble. She closed her eyes and pictured her grandmother humming softly, the street performer tapping keys on the sidewalk, the old keyboard she had saved for. All of it had brought her to this moment. When her turn came, she stepped onto the small stage. She looked out at the audience and saw strangers, some smiling, some whispering quietly to each other. She looked at the piano and took a slow breath. Then she sat down and placed her fingers on the keys. The first note was soft, almost fragile. But as she continued, the sound grew steadier. The room became silent. People leaned forward slightly, sensing something special. She played with a calm heart, letting emotion guide her more than technique. When she finished, the room filled with gentle applause. She bowed shyly, her face warm, her heart beating fast. She didn't know it at that moment, but a simple recording from someone in the audience would soon change her life. That day, she walked home feeling lighter than she had in a long time. She didn't think about perfection or fame. She only thought about how playing music made her feel alive, and how she wanted to keep going, no matter how long the road ahead might be. The days after the recital felt different for her, even though life around her continued in its usual quiet rhythm. She still woke up early for school, still packed the same simple lunch, and still walked the same familiar streets. But inside her, something had shifted. She felt a little more confident, a little more aware that maybe she had something special, even if she didn't fully understand what that meant yet. Her instructor at the community center noticed the change as well. During their next lesson, the instructor smiled and told her she played with great emotion on stage. She didn't know how to respond to praise like that. Compliments made her shy, and she only nodded softly, her cheeks turning pink. Still, hearing those words encouraged her more than she expected. The instructor believed she was ready to move forward and suggested learning a slightly more challenging piece. She felt nervous at the idea, but also excited. She wanted to keep growing, step by step, without rushing. So she agreed. The next piece she began practicing was not by Chopin yet, but it carried a gentle, emotional tone that reminded her of him. She listened carefully as her instructor played it first, following the rise and fall of the melody. It was like tracing the path of someone's feelings through sound. When she tried playing it herself, she stumbled many times, especially at the transitions, but she didn't let that discourage her. She returned home every evening and went straight to her little keyboard. Because the keys were old and some were worn down, she had to press them carefully to avoid getting an uneven sound. She sometimes laughed at herself when the keyboard made strange noises, but she kept practicing. The limitations didn't bother her. She had learned long ago that passion mattered more than perfect tools. Her parents noticed her dedication even more now. Sometimes her mother quietly left snacks on her desk, knowing she would forget to eat while practicing. Her father peeked into her room once in a while and simply said, "Don't stay up too late," though he said it with a smile instead of a scolding tone. One evening, her mother asked if she enjoyed playing this much. She nodded with a small smile, unsure of how to explain the feeling. For her, music wasn't just a hobby. It was a way of expressing thoughts she couldn't put into words. It was a quiet companion that never judged her. Her mother didn't fully understand, but she could see the happiness in her daughter's eyes. And that was enough. At school, she remained quiet, though a few classmates who had attended the recital approached her with surprise. One girl said, "I didn't know you could play like that." Another boy asked how long she had been practicing. She answered politely, but didn't go into too much detail. It felt strange to talk about something so personal. She wasn't trying to hide, but she didn't feel ready to be open about it. Either. Her music teacher at school heard about her recital from a colleague and asked her to play a short piece for the class. At first, she hesitated. She didn't want to seem like she was showing off. But the teacher explained it as a chance for the class to learn from each other, not a performance. After thinking it through, she agreed. When the day came, She stood in front of her classmates with her small keyboard placed on a table. There were no spotlights, no stage, no formal audience. Just students sitting at their desks, watching with curiosity. She took a deep breath and played the simple melody she had created during the school assignment months before. The room fell silent as she played, not because it was a perfect performance, but because the tune had a warm, comforting quality. When she finished, the class clapped softly. The sound wasn't loud or dramatic, but she felt grateful. She felt like she had shared a part of herself, and the class had accepted it. After that day, a few classmates began greeting her more often in the hallways. Some asked for help with music projects. Others simply smiled or waved. She didn't suddenly become popular, but she didn't feel as invisible anymore. Her journey at the community center continued with quiet determination. Weeks passed, and she practiced the new piece until she could play it with fluid motion. Her instructor praised her progress and then handed her a sheet of music with a familiar name on it, Chopin. She froze for a moment when she saw the name printed on the top of the page. It wasn't one of his most difficult pieces, but it was still a big step for her. She felt a mix of joy and fear. Playing Chopin had always been a distant dream, something she believed she wouldn't be ready for until she was older. Her instructor explained that she didn't have to rush or force herself. She could learn it little by little, without pressure. Hearing that eased her nerves, and she agreed to begin. The first time she heard the instructor play the piece, her heart felt full. The melody was delicate, flowing like a gentle stream. It carried emotion in every note, and she felt herself drawn to it immediately. When she placed her fingers on the keys and tried the first few notes, she played them softly, trying to capture the feeling she heard. At first, she struggled with the transitions and timing. Chopin's music was more complex than anything she had attempted before. But she didn't give up. Instead, she slowed down and practiced each measure patiently until her fingers remembered the movements. She spent hours repeating sections, listening carefully to how each note blended with the next. Sometimes she'd close her eyes and try to feel the emotion behind the music. Other times, she'd hum the melody softly before playing to make sure she understood its rhythm. Her instructor watched her with quiet pride. She could tell the girl wasn't simply learning notes. She was learning to understand the heart of the music. That was something many students struggled with, but for this girl, it seemed to come naturally. One afternoon, after a long practice session, she walked home feeling tired but fulfilled. The air outside was crisp, and the sky was painted with warm shades of orange. She carried her sheet music carefully in her bag, as if it were something precious. That evening, her father came home earlier than usual. When he passed by her room and heard her practicing Chopin's piece slowly, he paused to listen. He didn't know much about classical music, but he could hear the emotion in her playing. He knocked lightly and told her dinner was ready. Before leaving, he added, "You're getting better every day." His words meant a lot to her. She treasured simple encouragement more than grand praise. As the months passed, she became more confident in her playing. She still made mistakes, but she approached them calmly instead of feeling discouraged. She understood now that growth came from patience, not perfection. At the community center, the instructor suggested she consider joining a small online contest meant for young musicians. It wasn't a big competition. It was just a way for kids to share short performances with a friendly audience. But the idea frightened her. She knew that performing on camera was different from playing in front of a small crowd. A video could be watched again and again by people she didn't know. It made her feel exposed in a way she wasn't used to. She hesitated for weeks. Every time she thought about entering the contest, her stomach tightened. But the instructor encouraged her gently, saying it could help her build courage. She didn't want to disappoint her instructor, but she also didn't want to force herself into something she wasn't comfortable with. One night, while practicing quietly. She thought about the street performer she had seen years ago, the one who played with such calm confidence. She wondered if he had ever been afraid. Maybe he had been, but he played anyway. The next day, she told her instructor she would think about it a bit more, but wasn't ready yet. The instructor smiled and said she respected her decision. There was no rush. Instead of focusing on contests or performances, the instructor encouraged her to continue exploring music emotionally. She introduced her to other composers, different styles, and new techniques. The girl found herself fascinated by the variety of sounds and moods she could create. Her relationship with music deepened. Sometimes she played softly when she felt sad. Other times she played bright melodies when she felt hopeful. Music became not just a skill she was learning, but a safe space where she could express herself. One rainy afternoon, she was practicing at the community center when a group of children from a nearby classroom wandered over to listen. They were younger than her, about 8 or 9 years old, and they watched with wide eyes as she played a gentle melody. After she finished, one of the children asked if she could teach them a small tune. She felt awkward at first. She had never taught anyone before. But she agreed and slowly showed them how to press a few simple keys in a pattern. Their faces lit up when they made the melody together, even though it was just a basic tune. Seeing their excitement warmed her heart. For the first time, she realized that music could connect her with people in ways she had never imagined. As she continued her lessons, she practiced Chopin's piece until she could play it smoothly, though she still aimed to improve the details. Every time she played it, she felt closer to understanding the emotions in the music. Her instructor eventually suggested she play the piece at the next community gathering, not as a formal performance, but as background music for a small event. It was a gentle way for her to practice playing in front of people without pressure. She felt nervous again at the idea, but she knew this was another step in her journey, just like the recital had been. On the day of the gathering, she sat by the piano while people chatted and moved around the room. She didn't have a spotlight on her, and no one was expecting perfection. She took a deep breath and began to play. The sound floated through the room, soft enough not to interrupt conversations, but warm enough to make people pause and listen. Some looked over with curious smiles. Others simply enjoyed the atmosphere. She played with steady hands, letting the music guide her. And for the first time, she felt a sense of ease while performing in front of others. The fear didn't disappear completely, but it grew smaller. She didn't know it yet. But this quiet moment would become the foundation for something much bigger, something that would soon reach far beyond her small town. Weeks passed quietly, but the small steps she had been taking began to build something larger than she expected. She continued her daily practice, playing Chopin slowly at first, and then with more confidence. Each note, each movement of her fingers became more familiar and more expressive. She could feel the music moving through her, carrying emotions she could not yet fully name. It had become part of her, a language she understood better than words. One afternoon, the community center announced a small recital for the children and teenagers who had been learning music there. It wasn't a big event. Only a few parents and a handful of neighbors were invited. For her, it wasn't the fear of performing that bothered her. It was the thought that she might not do justice to the music she loved so dearly. But her instructor encouraged her gently, reminding her that it was not about perfection, but about expressing herself. She agreed to play one of Chopin's simpler pieces. Even though it wasn't as difficult as the compositions she dreamed of, she felt the weight of responsibility to convey the emotion behind the notes. In the days leading up to the recital, she practiced more diligently than ever, often staying late at the community center, lingering in the empty room while the afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows. She noticed small improvements each day. Her fingers moved more confidently across the keys, and her timing became steadier. The music began to flow naturally, and she began to understand the pauses and the subtle shifts in tone that made Chopin so captivating. It was no longer just a series of notes she played. It was a story she told through sound. The day of the recital arrived. She dressed in a simple outfit, her hair neatly tied back. Her parents couldn't attend because of work, but they gave her words of encouragement before leaving the house, which she clutched in her heart. Her instructor gave her a reassuring nod and whispered, "Just play from your heart. That's all that matters." Backstage, she felt the familiar flutter of nerves. She watched as other students performed, some confident, some trembling. Each performance was unique, and she quietly observed how each musician expressed themselves. It made her realize that music could be shared in so many ways, and that there was no single way to be perfect. When it was finally her turn, she took a deep breath and walked onto the small stage. She approached the upright piano, placing her hands on the keys. She felt a wave of calm wash over her, remembering the street performer she had seen years ago, the quiet practice sessions at home, and the encouragement of her instructor. It was all leading to this moment. The first note sounded soft and tentative, but soon it grew steady. Her fingers moved with more confidence as she played the melody. Each note carried emotion, the gentle sorrow, the fleeting joy, the quiet contemplation. She felt herself dissolving into the music, letting it guide her rather than worrying about making mistakes. The audience listened quietly, captivated by the delicate beauty of the performance. Some parents closed their eyes, letting the music speak to them in ways words could not. A few neighbors leaned forward, their faces reflecting surprise and admiration. The girl had no idea she was making such an impression. She was too immersed in the experience itself. When the final note faded, there was a moment of silence, as if everyone held their breath, reluctant to break the spell. Then soft applause began, gradually growing louder. She bowed shyly, her cheeks warm, and returned to her seat backstage, heart pounding with a mix of relief and excitement. After the recital, as she packed her things, a parent approached her. "Your playing was beautiful," the person said. "It touched me more than I can say." She smiled quietly, feeling a strange mix of pride and humility. Praise had always made her nervous, but hearing that her music had affected someone deeply made her feel something new connection. Later that evening, she returned home and practiced Chopin once again. The notes felt alive in her hands. Something had shifted. She could sense the music resonating more deeply than ever before. Her confidence had grown, not because of applause, but because she realized she could communicate emotion through the piano. A week later, something unexpected happened. One of the parents who had attended the recital recorded a short video of her performance and posted it on social media. She didn't know this at first. She continued her practice as usual, unaware that people beyond her small town were starting to see and hear her music. The next morning, she opened her phone to find messages from friends she barely knew, and even some people she had never met, commenting on the video. The views were growing steadily, but she couldn't quite understand why anyone would be interested in her playing. She had always played for herself, not for attention or recognition. Her instructor noticed the excitement around her. She gently explained that the video was being shared because people were moved by the sincerity of her playing. She reassured the girl that it was normal to feel overwhelmed and reminded her that she didn't have to change who she was or how she played Dot as the days passed. The views climbed quickly, surpassing thousands. She felt a mixture of surprise, disbelief, and nervousness. People from other towns, even other countries, were watching a girl they had never met perform Chopin. Some left comments praising her talent. Others simply wrote words of encouragement. The attention was both thrilling and intimidating. She had to learn to navigate these new feelings carefully. She didn't want the attention to change why she played. Music was still a deeply personal experience for her, and she worried that performing for an audience she could not see might make it feel less genuine. One afternoon, she sat at her keyboard and thought about what it meant to be seen and heard by so many people. She realized that even though she had never intended for her music to reach far beyond her small community, it had. And if her playing could make even a few people feel something, comfort, joy, hope, then sharing her music was not a bad thing. Encouraged by this realization, she continued practicing diligently. She explored more of Chopin's pieces, each one offering a new challenge. Some required delicate finger movements, others demanded careful timing and control. Each time she learned a new piece, she felt a sense of accomplishment and joy. Her skills were improving steadily, and her emotional connection to the music deepened out. Her school life continued alongside her musical growth. She remained quiet and focused, but her classmates began to notice the change in her demeanor. She carried herself with a quiet confidence, though she never boasted about her talent. Some students were curious about the video, and she answered questions politely. Though she didn't seek attention. At the community center, her instructor helped her navigate the sudden attention from social media. They talked about the importance of balance, practicing for oneself, while appreciating the positive impact of reaching others. The instructor reminded her that growth was gradual, and that she didn't have to perform perfectly for the world to see her value. One evening, she received a message from someone who had watched the video from far away. They wrote about how her playing had inspired them during a difficult time. Reading those words, she felt a warmth in her chest she had never experienced before. It was proof that music could connect people across distances, across cultures, and across circumstances. That night, she practiced late into the evening, playing Chopin with renewed passion. She closed her eyes and let the notes guide her, feeling every subtle emotion the music carried. She realized that her journey was just beginning. There would be more challenges, more performances, more lessons to learn, but she felt ready to face them. Her parents, though still busy with work, noticed the change in her as well. She seemed more determined, more focused, but also calmer. The attention from the video didn't make her proud in a boastful way. It made her reflective. She knew she had a gift, but she also knew it came with responsibility. Weeks turned into months, and the video continued to gain attention. People left comments, shared it with friends, and even reached out to offer small opportunities. But she continued to play primarily for herself, guided by the love she had discovered for the piano and the music that had captured her heart years ago. Through it all, she kept practicing at the community center. The instructor introduced her to more complex Chopin pieces, and she welcomed the challenge. Each day was an opportunity to grow, to understand the depth of emotion music could carry, and to connect with the world in a way that transcended words. One evening, while practicing alone, she paused and thought about the path she had walked. From the quiet town, the small used keyboard, the street performer she had once watched in awe, to the recital and the unexpected viral attention, everything had led her to this moment. She felt gratitude for the support she had received, for the inspiration she had found, and for the music that had become a part of her soul. Her journey was not yet complete. There would be more challenges, more audiences, and more opportunities to share her gift. But she felt a sense of calm confidence. She had learned that music was not just about skill, it was about emotion, connection, and expression. And she was ready to continue exploring this world, one note at a time. The days after her video went viral were full of unexpected excitement. She woke up to find hundreds of new messages, comments, and notifications on her phone. People from different towns, cities, and even countries were watching the video and leaving messages of encouragement. She had never imagined that her quiet practice in a small town could reach so many people. At first, she felt overwhelmed. The attention was huge and unfamiliar, as she didn't know how to respond. But her instructor reminded her that she didn't have to reply to anyone right away. She could continue to focus on what mattered most, her music. She spent the next few weeks practicing more than ever before, but with a new sense of purpose. She realized that her music could touch people's hearts in ways she hadn't thought possible. Even though she had always played for herself, now she felt the gentle pull of responsibility to share her gift. It wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about the emotion that music carried and the connection it could create. Her parents noticed the change in her as well. She was more thoughtful and focused, spending long hours practicing, but still managing her schoolwork responsibly. They couldn't attend every event or see every performance, but they supported her quietly, leaving snacks, reminding her to eat, and encouraging her without overwhelming her. Their pride was visible in small ways: a nod, a smile, or a simple comment about how far she had come. At school, the attention she received from the video created whispers among students. Some were curious, some impressed, and others surprised that someone so quiet could inspire so many people. She didn't seek attention, but she learned to handle it with quiet grace. She answered questions politely and focused on her studies, balancing her growing musical commitments with school life. The community center invited her to perform at a local cultural festival, which was a larger event than the recitals she had attended before. She felt nervous at the idea. There would be more people, cameras, and expectations. But her instructor encouraged her to think of it as an opportunity to share music with others, not as a test of skill. That perspective helped calm her nerves, though she still practiced intensely in preparation. In the weeks leading up to the festival, she prepared her Chopin piece meticulously. She analyzed every note, every pause, every subtle shift in tone. She wanted to communicate the emotion in the music clearly, so that listeners could feel what she felt when playing. Some days she became frustrated when she couldn't get a passage right, but she reminded herself that patience and persistence were part of the journey. The day of the festival arrived with clear skies and a warm breeze. She wore a simple dress, her hair neatly tied back, and her heart raced with a mixture of fear and excitement. When she stepped onto the outdoor stage, she saw a crowd larger than any audience she had faced before. There were people of all ages, some smiling, some taking photos, and others simply listening quietly. The noise of the festival faded as she focused on the piano in front of her. Her fingers touched the keys, and the first notes rang out softly. At first, she felt the familiar tremor of nerves, but she gradually let the music guide her. Each note carried the depth of Chopin's emotion, delicate yet powerful. She lost herself in the melody, feeling it flow through her and out to the audience. The people around her seemed captivated, their attention drawn into the sound. When the final note faded, there was a moment of silence. Then the audience erupted in applause. Some stood, some clapped enthusiastically, and a few even wiped away tears. She bowed, her face flushed, and stepped back, heart pounding with a mix of relief, joy, and disbelief. She realized that her music had reached people deeply, creating a shared emotional experience she could never have anticipated. After the performance, several people approached her, expressing their admiration and curiosity. Some asked how long she had been playing, others asked for advice, and a few simply thanked her for the beauty she had shared. She responded quietly, feeling shy but grateful for their words. It was overwhelming, but also rewarding. She understood now that music had the power to create bonds, even between strangers. As she left the stage, a festival organizer asked if they could record her performance and share it online. She hesitated, nervous about more attention, but then remembered her instructor's advice. She could share her gift without losing herself. She agreed, and the recording quickly gained more views and attention online. Back at home, she reflected on the day. She realized that fear and excitement often coexist, and that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the choice to continue despite it. The experience strengthened her resolve to keep learning, practicing, and sharing her music, no matter how large or small the audience. Her practice continued with renewed energy. She explored more Chopin pieces, each presenting new challenges and new ways to express emotion. She also experimented with interpreting other composers, learning to adapt her style while maintaining the authenticity that made her playing special. Every day, she discovered something new about music, about herself, and about the connection between the two. The viral video continued to attract attention. Messages poured in from people who had never met her, praising her technique, her emotion, and her courage. Some stories moved her deeply, like the one from a young listener who said her music had helped them feel less alone during a difficult time. She realized that even small gestures like a note played at the right moment could create a lasting impact on others. Amid the growing attention, she remained grounded. She continued her routine of school, practice, and quiet reflection. She spent time with her parents, helping at home and supporting them as they had supported her. She also made time to relax, read, and enjoy the simple pleasures of life in her small town. Balance became key, allowing her to maintain her mental and emotional well-being while pursuing her musical dreams. Her instructor encouraged her to explore live performances further. They discussed the possibility of participating in more public events, each offering the chance to share her music and gain experience. She approached each opportunity with careful thought, selecting events that felt meaningful rather than simply pursuing attention in one particularly memorable event. She played for a small gathering at a local library. The audience was intimate, and the setting quiet and serene. She chose a Chopin piece that was emotionally complex, requiring careful attention to tone and timing. As she played, she felt completely immersed in the music. The audience was silent, completely absorbed in the performance. And she realized that the magic of music didn't depend on the size of the crowd, but on the connection it created. Afterward, several older musicians approached her, offering encouragement and guidance. They were impressed by her technique, her emotional depth, and her dedication. She listened carefully to their advice, absorbing what she could while staying true to her own style and interpretation. Each interaction helped her grow, not just as a musician, but as a person learning to navigate the world through her art. One evening, as she practiced alone, she thought about how far she had come. From the first street performance she had watched as a child, to her first recital, to the viral video that had brought her music to hundreds of thousands of people. Each step had been a combination of practice, courage, and quiet determination. She felt gratitude for the support of her family, her instructors, and even the strangers who had listened and shared her music. She also thought about the challenges ahead. She knew that being a musician required constant growth, patience, and resilience. There would be more performances, more opportunities, and more responsibilities. But she felt ready. The experiences she had already faced had taught her that music was more than skill, it was communication, expression, and connection. In the weeks that followed, she continued to practice daily, focusing on both technical precision and emotional depth. She experimented with subtle changes in timing, dynamics, and phrasing, learning how small adjustments could significantly alter the feeling of a piece. She explored the history of the music she played, reading about Chopin's life and the context of his compositions, deepening her understanding and appreciation. Her growing experience in public performances also helped her manage nerves more effectively. She learned techniques to stay focused, to channel anxiety into energy, and to connect with the audience in a meaningful way. She discovered that each performance was unique, influenced by the setting, the audience, and her own emotional state. Embracing this unpredictability made her playing more authentic and expressive. Throughout all of this, She remained humble and reflective. She didn't seek recognition for its own sake, but she appreciated the encouragement and support she received. Each positive comment, each smile, and each note of appreciation reinforced her belief in the power of music to touch hearts and create connections. She realized that her journey was not just about personal achievement, but about sharing something meaningful with others. The combination of practice, reflection, and performance began to shape her not only as a musician, but as a person. She became more disciplined, patient, and empathetic. She learned to listen to the music, to her instructors, and to the audience. She understood that growth required effort, openness, and the courage to face challenges. And she knew that every note she played was an opportunity to tell a story, convey emotion, and reach someone in a way that words could not dot as the days turned into months. Her confidence grew, and her connection to Chopin's music deepened. Each piece she played became a new exploration, a journey into emotion and expression. And with every performance, whether in front of a small audience or hundreds of thousands online, she carried the knowledge that her music could touch lives in ways she had never imagined. The viral video had been the beginning, not the end, of a journey that was only growing richer with each passing day. The invitation to perform at a major cultural event in Tokyo came as a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The girl had never imagined stepping onto such a large stage in one of the busiest cities in her country. Her heart raced when she first saw the letter, and she read it over and over, hardly believing it was real. The event promised to host a large live audience, along with thousands watching online. This was a step far beyond the community center recitals and local festivals she had grown used to. Her parents were supportive but cautious. They reminded her to stay focused on the music itself rather than the attention it would bring. Their calm encouragement helped ground her, even as her mind raced with anticipation. She spent hours planning her practice schedule, balancing schoolwork with long hours at the piano. Every day, she pushed herself to refine each detail of her Chopin pieces, from the softest pianissimo to the brightest forte. She wanted every note to carry emotion and meaning. Her instructor at the community center became a steady presence, guiding her with patience. They worked on timing, expression, and stage presence. They discussed the subtle ways she could convey emotion without overdoing it, and the importance of staying calm even in front of a massive audience. These lessons were more than technical. They taught her how to connect with people through music. In the weeks leading up to the event, she practiced intensively. Some days were frustrating, when mistakes seemed endless and progress felt slow. But she reminded herself that growth required persistence. She would slow down, focus on difficult sections, and repeat them until their fingers remembered the movements instinctively. Each session ended with a sense of quiet satisfaction, even if it had been tiring. She also spent time visualizing the performance. She imagined herself walking onto the stage, sitting at the grand piano, and letting the music flow naturally. She imagined the audience listening intently, feeling the emotion in every note. These mental rehearsals helped her calm nerves and build confidence. It became a way of preparing, not just physically, but emotionally. The night before the event, she went through her pieces one last time at the community center. Her fingers moved with practiced precision, and she felt a quiet joy in the music. She realized how much she had grown since first touching a small used keyboard years ago. Back then, she had played out of curiosity and love. Now, she played with skill, understanding, and emotional depth. It was a journey that had transformed her. Quietly and steadily. The morning of the event, she packed her things carefully, making sure everything she needed was ready. Her parents drove her to the venue, offering calm words of encouragement. The city was bustling, a world away from the quiet streets of her hometown. She felt a mixture of awe and nervous excitement as she stepped out of the car. and saw the large crowd waiting. Backstage, she took a deep breath and prepared herself. Other performers were there, some experienced, some younger like her. The atmosphere was lively, but she focused on her own music, tuning out distractions. She reminded herself to play from the heart, to let emotion guide her fingers. That thought brought her comfort and steadied her nerves. When it was her turn, she walked onto the stage. The bright lights made the audience difficult to see, but she could feel their presence. She sat at the grand piano and took a slow, deep breath. Then she placed her fingers on the keys and began to play. The first notes were gentle, almost fragile. But soon, the melody grew stronger, and she allowed herself to feel the music fully. Each note carried the emotion she had worked so hard to understand. The crowd was silent, completely absorbed in the music. Some closed their eyes, letting the sound wash over them, while others leaned forward, captivated by the beauty and delicacy of her performance. Time seemed to stretch as she played. She was fully immersed, her body moving naturally with the music. She could feel the emotion in each chord, the tension and release, the quiet moments of reflection. It was a conversation with the audience without words. She was telling a story, expressing feelings too complex for language. When the last note faded, there was a pause, a collective breath held by everyone listening. Then the applause erupted. It was loud, enthusiastic, and filled with genuine appreciation. People stood, clapping and cheering, and she bowed deeply, cheeks flushed, overwhelmed by the response. The feeling was unlike anything she had ever experienced. It was a moment of connection, of shared emotion, of understanding without needing words. After stepping off the stage, several audience members approached her to express their admiration. Some were music enthusiasts, some were families who had attended with children, and others were older musicians who offered encouragement and advice. She answered quietly, politely, and gratefully, trying to take in the magnitude of the experience. The event organizers asked if they could record her performance and share it online. She hesitated, feeling the weight of attention once more. But she remembered the lessons from her instructor and the quiet joy she felt in playing for herself. She agreed, understanding that sharing her music could bring the same connection and emotion to people far beyond the venue. The recording quickly gained views and attention online, reaching more people than she could have imagined. Messages arrived from across the country and even from other parts of the world, praising her skill, her emotion, and the courage she had shown on stage. She read them quietly, feeling a mix of pride, humility, and gratitude. Her music had touched lives, just as she had always hoped it might. In the days following the event, she reflected on her journey. She thought about the first street performance she had seen as a child, the hours of practice at home on a small keyboard, and the encouragement of her instructors and parents. Every step had prepared her for this moment, and she realized that growth was not a sudden leap, but a series of quiet, persistent efforts. She continued to practice daily, exploring more Chopin pieces and expanding her repertoire. She experimented with interpretation, dynamics, and phrasing, learning to express emotion more clearly and authentically. She studied recordings of great pianists, observing their techniques and understanding their choices, but always returning to her own style and voice. Her school life remained important. She balanced her academics with her music, knowing that discipline in one area strengthened discipline in another. She maintained friendships, helped at home, and continued her quiet, thoughtful ways. Her growing public recognition did not change her fundamentally. She remained focused, humble, and driven by love for music. Her instructor continued to guide her, offering feedback, encouragement, and wisdom. They discussed future performances, opportunities for competitions, and ways to deepen her understanding of music. Each discussion helped her see that her journey was far from over, that there were endless ways to grow. and that the joy of music was in the ongoing process of learning and expressing. Through it all, she remained grounded. She understood that attention, recognition, and praise were secondary to the real purpose of her music: communication, expression, and connection. Each time she played, whether to a crowd of thousands or in a quiet room, she focused on conveying emotion, sharing stories, and touching hearts. She also began to notice subtle ways in which music shaped her life beyond the piano. She became more patient, more empathetic, and more aware of the feelings of others. She learned to listen deeply, not only to music, but to people, to nature, and to the quiet moments in life. Her understanding of emotion deepened, enriching both her personal life and her music. In quiet moments, she reflected on the people who had inspired her, the street performer, her instructors, her parents, and the audience members who had listened with open hearts. Each had played a role in her journey, teaching her about dedication, passion, patience, and the power of music to connect people. As she looked forward, she felt excitement rather than fear. There would be more stages, more audiences, more challenges. But she had grown strong, patient, and confident through each step of her journey. She understood that every performance was a new opportunity to share her gift, to touch lives, and to express what words could not. Her journey had already taught her the value of persistence, the beauty of quiet dedication, and the transformative power of music. She knew that she would continue to grow, explore, and express herself through the piano for many years to come. And with each note she played, she would carry forward the quiet magic that had first drawn her to music, love that had started in a small town and now reached thousands, touching hearts in ways she could never have imagined. The following months were a whirlwind of music, learning, and reflection. After her successful performance in Tokyo, her life had subtly shifted. People recognized her on the streets, in her small town, and in nearby cities. She was invited to perform at various cultural events and online showcases, each experience building her confidence and skill. Despite the growing attention, she remained grounded, focusing on the music itself rather than the recognition it brought. Her mornings began early, with schoolwork followed by practice sessions that stretched for hours. She experimented with new Chopin pieces, some delicate and lyrical, others powerful and dramatic. Every day presented new challenges, but she met them with quiet determination. Mistakes were no longer sources of frustration. They were opportunities to learn, to refine her technique, and to understand the emotional depth of the music. Her instructor continued to guide her, offering insight into phrasing, dynamics, and interpretation. They discussed how each performance was unique, how the subtle differences in touch, timing, and expression could convey entirely new emotions. She listened attentively, absorbing every detail, and then applied it to her practice with patience. The process was slow and deliberate, but each improvement brought a sense of quiet satisfaction. Despite her growing public profile, she remained deeply connected to her roots. She continued practicing at the community center, where she first learned to play and spent time with the children who had once watched her with wide-eyed curiosity. She quietly taught them small melodies, helping them feel the joy of music. Their smiles and laughter reminded her why she loved playing so much. Music was a bridge between people, a shared experience beyond words. Her family provided steady support throughout. Her parents marveled at her dedication, but never pressured her. They encouraged her to rest when needed, offered gentle guidance, and celebrated her progress in ways that made her feel secure. Their presence was a constant reminder that her achievements were not just her own, but shared with those who loved and believed in her. One evening, after a long practice session, she sat quietly by her piano, reflecting on her journey. From the small, warm keyboard at home to the grand stage in Tokyo, each step had been a lesson in patience, persistence, and passion. She thought about the street performer she had once watched as a child and realized how far she had come. Yet she understood that the journey was ongoing. There were still challenges to face, skills to develop, and emotions to explore. Her music now reached a global audience. Online videos of her performances garnered millions of views, and messages from viewers poured in. Some wrote about how her music had comforted them during difficult times, while others expressed admiration for her skill and expression. Reading these messages, she felt a mixture of humility and inspiration. She realized that her gift could touch lives far beyond her immediate surroundings, and that the responsibility of sharing it was as profound as the joy it brought her. Despite the attention, she approached each performance with the same quiet focus she had always maintained. She learned to channel nerves into energy, letting the music guide her rather than worrying about the audience. Each stage, whether small or large, became an opportunity to tell a story, to express feelings too complex for words. Her connection with Chopin's compositions deepened, and she discovered nuances in his music she had never noticed before. At school, life continued alongside her musical endeavors. She remained diligent in her studies, maintaining friendships and participating in everyday activities. She discovered that balancing school and music required discipline and time management, skills she carried into all areas of her life. Though recognized for her talent, she never sought to dominate attention or be treated differently. She remained humble, approachable, and thoughtful. Her instructors encouraged her to explore more public performances and competitions. They suggested a combination of local and national events, allowing her to experience different audiences and settings. Each event was a learning opportunity, helping her refine technique, stage presence, and emotional delivery. She embraced these experiences with care, understanding that growth was gradual and required dedication. One particularly meaningful event was a charity concert, where she performed for children facing serious illnesses. The audience's attentive faces, some lit with wonder and others softened by hardship, made her acutely aware of the power of music. Every note she played felt like a gift, a bridge connecting her to the emotions of the listeners. After the performance, she received heartfelt thanks from parents and caregivers, leaving a profound impact on her understanding of music's purpose. Amid these public experiences, she continued personal exploration of music. She analyzed recordings of renowned pianists, studied historical contexts of compositions, and experimented with her own interpretations. She found joy in discovering subtle shifts in tempo, dynamics, and touch that could evoke different emotions. Her practice sessions became journeys into both technical mastery and emotional expression. The challenges were not always easy. There were times when fatigue, self-doubt, or the pressure of expectations threatened to overwhelm her. In those moments, she returned to the fundamentals: slow practice, reflection, and connection with the music. She reminded herself why she played, focusing on the joy of creation rather than the weight of performance. These moments strengthened her resilience and reinforced the importance of authenticity in her music. Over time, she also explored composing small pieces of her own. Inspired by Chopin, but guided by her own experiences and feelings, she began crafting simple melodies that captured moments from her life. Though humble in scale, these compositions were deeply personal, offering a new dimension to her musical expression. Sharing them with her instructor and a few trusted friends provided encouragement and constructive feedback. Enriching her development as a musician. Her presence online continued to grow, with viewers appreciating both her interpretations of classical works and the sincerity she conveyed. She received invitations to collaborate with other musicians and participate in online concerts, extending her reach further. She approached these opportunities thoughtfully, ensuring that each engagement aligned with her principles and comfort. Maintaining balance between public exposure and personal growth became a guiding focus. Despite the expanding world around her, She found solace in quiet practice sessions. She often sat alone in her room or at the community center, closing her eyes and letting the music guide her. These moments were meditative, allowing her to explore emotion, refine technique, and reconnect with the original joy that drew her to the piano. They reminded her that beyond recognition and applause, music remained an intimate, transformative experience. Her journey also fostered personal growth beyond music. She became more patient, empathetic, and aware of the feelings of those around her. Observing and connecting with audiences, peers, and friends taught her lessons in communication, understanding, and emotional intelligence. Music became not only a form of expression, but also a lens through which she understood the world. Through all these experiences, her family remained a foundation. Her parents' quiet support, her siblings' playful encouragement, and the community that nurtured her growth provided stability and reassurance. She learned to value relationships, to recognize the importance of gratitude, and to share her successes with those who had supported her journey from the beginning. As her 16th birthday approached, she reflected on the extraordinary path her life had taken. From a small, curious child drawn to a street performer's piano to a young musician captivating thousands, she marveled at the unfolding journey. Each challenge, each practice session, and each performance had shaped her skill, her confidence, and her understanding of music's emotional power. Looking ahead, she envisioned a future filled with music, learning, and connection. She dreamed of performing in diverse venues, exploring new compositions, and continuing to refine her skill and expression. Yet she understood that the essence of her journey lay not in fame or recognition, but in the quiet, persistent dedication to growth, the love for music, and the ability to touch hearts through sound. Her story, still unfolding, was a testament to the power of passion, discipline, and resilience. She had learned that music was not merely notes on a page, but a living, breathing form of communication capable of connecting people across distances, cultures, and experiences. Every performance, whether for a single listener or an audience of thousands, was an opportunity to share a piece of herself, to evoke emotion, and to create moments of understanding and beauty. In the quiet of her practice room, surrounded by the familiar keys and the soft glow of evening light, she played once more. Each note carried memory, emotion, and hope. The journey that began in a small town with a simple keyboard had grown in